understanding data provenance, data lineage, things that we didn't have to worry about back in the day. Now we take on so much more importance when you look at our wired and connected world and the banks and merchants and other institutions that are relying on us for all of our services.
This is VB in Conversation, where we look closely at enterprise data technology and data strategy. I'm Matt Marshall. The amount of data that businesses need to store and process is exploding. For most big companies, much of that data is processed in the data centers on-premise, but increasingly this is moving to the cloud or to a hybrid of the two. But how are businesses managing this data explosion and its costs now that there may be an economic slowdown or amid increased risks around security or regulations around privacy? I recently spoke with JoAnn Stonier, Chief Data Officer of Mastercard, about her team's data center strategy, given the huge scale of its 125 billion plus transactions a year, which isn't slowing down. Good morning, JoAnn. We're talking with you today about the investments in the data center at Mastercard and data strategy. Thank you for joining us.
Hey Matt, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
What makes Mastercard unique, do you think, in terms of its data center and data strategy overall? In other words, why are we talking with you right now about the data center?
Sure. So, I think it's our size, our scale, our globality first is what a lot of people think of. But we're also not a digital native firm. We're a firm that comes from a traditional business model. We were a financial processor for our banks for a very long time. But we've been on a journey for the past 10 to 15 years of really using our data and digital assets to create new products and services and solutions. And we've really done that in, I think, a very responsible and ethical way to make sure that we are considering all stakeholders involved. Data strategy is a bit of a team sport. Data strategy always has to go along with your business strategy. There's no point in having a data strategy if it's not achieving your business goals. And while MasterCard is really a B2B company, what we do is we really create our products and services with the individual in mind.
You talked first about scale. Can you talk about the number of transactions you do and the data that's associated with those transactions?
So yeah, in a year, in any given year, right now, we process over 125 billion transactions around the globe. We're in over 210 markets globally. We think we have one of the largest global footprints as a result. We are, a network of networks now. People know us mostly for our credit, debit, and prepaid products, but we are more than that. We now do digital identity work in open banking, which has expanded our financial suite. And we really do much more in fraud, cyber, and econometric insights, as well as projects for governments and other civil society participants in what we call our financial inclusion and our data for social impact work.
We surfaced that article from 15 years ago, JoAnn, as you know, and there was a reference to how there was 100 terabytes in the warehouse, and maybe that was going to 1.8 petabytes. What does it actually look like today in terms of what your warehouse and data looks like?
So we don't measure it exactly the same way because we're no longer just one warehouse anymore. I think it was a great article that you unearthed, but we are now moving to kind of a hybrid structure with warehouse as well as a cloud structure, right? Because we have to be more nimble. We have to be able to process more data in a global way that is also more effective and more efficient for us. We have to have a flexible technology stack without compromising our security. And our resiliency is really what our customers look at, as well as we have to provide security and redundancy, right? So because of that, we don't measure it the same way as we used to, but it is multiple times as large. And with the advent of technologies like AI, right, our data resources have just grown exponentially as everybody else's have.
Yeah. The data growth is significant everywhere. It sounds like yours included. What would you say Mastercard's biggest challenge is right now when it comes to the data center strategy?
Speed, probably. We're a big company. We have a lot of data. We have a big appetite, but we are large. And so making sure that we can execute strategy well, execute change well, keep the lights on so that it's a seamless experience to all of our customers while we're making the changes. I think we would all like to go faster than we sometimes can because we need to be flawless in how we're making the changes.
Okay, so speed, performance, flawlessness. Given those data processing needs, what does that mean for your data center compute warehousing investments? You talk about the new hybrid approach as well. Can you talk a little bit about what your investments in data center look like?
So we're continuing to invest, right? We're a company that has to continue to invest and modernize while maintaining a structure that actually continues to process those transactions, those core transactions that I talked about seamlessly and effectively, right? We are still the fastest network. We take some pride in that. We process transactions in a millisecond. When you are tapping, swiping, keying in those numbers, right? You expect instantaneous transaction processing while we are checking those transactions for fraud, making sure card numbers aren't stolen or being used in an inappropriate way. All of that is happening in milliseconds of processing around the globe every single day. But what we're also doing now is expanding our global remit, right? And so being able to process faster and more securely, even as, right, the security risks continue to go up, pressures from bad actors around the globe continue to go up. So what we've had to do is really innovate carefully as we've moved from, a data center that we used to have kind of one or two around the globe. Now we have multiple sites. We are in the cloud, but we have a hybrid private cloud where we've had to carefully move because of those very same security issues. What information are we moving to the cloud? So that footprint, we have now a network of the future initiative of what does the network of the future look like, given the different types of data that we need to process, given our expanding remit that I described. It's no longer just the core transaction data of date, time, place, and amount that we used to process in local and US currency. Now we do more, right? And so all of that is part of a roadmap of expansion that Mastercard is on, as well as really changing how we think. We have to really look at the bad actors and keep them at the gate, the barbarians at the gate, if you will, understanding data provenance, data lineage, things that we didn't have to worry about back in the day. Now we take on so much more importance when you look at our wired and connected world and the banks and merchants and other institutions that are relying on us for all of our services.
There's a lot there. You emphasize speed, the fastest network, the global reach, the increasing investments you're making in innovation, the security that's required there, necessity for data lineage, the moving from one to two or two sites to multiple sites. Can you describe what a data center looks like right now? Again, I think 15 years ago, Mastercard was talking about it, how it invested in one data center. What does a data center look like?
Folks of a certain vintage know that a data center used to be racks and racks of servers that took up a significant amount of real estate. They were secured areas that had to have a certain amounts of cooling and infrastructure to support them, right? That same facility today does not exist because the technology has changed. We do not need those, what we called back then, server farms to enable all of the technology. Those same locations now are no longer holding server farms. Instead, they hold people, people who have access to data at a faster speed. Those people now are the backbone of our innovation. They have access to data faster, whether that data is on a much smaller footprint server because the technology is improved, or they're getting the data from the cloud. They have access, all of our people have access to faster technology as well as faster data and information that helps them now innovate with data in a way that 15 or 20 years ago simply wasn't possible. But yes, I am of the vintage, absolutely, Matt, where I remember going to data centers, not only at Mastercard, but at other employers where there were multiple gates before you could even get close to those server farms, for sure.
Right. Yeah. So it's not server farms. It's not. You used to talk about walls and moats around these impenetrable fortresses.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, we used a lot of language that was equivalent to castles, I think, right?
Yeah.
Farms, castle, moats, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you invite me to go look at the modern data center, what does it look like? Is it just a few stacks and
It looks completely different than what it used to look like. It really does. It does look like it's much smaller. It's much smaller footprint. And honestly, aside from kind of our information security, our SOC, our Security Operations Center, where we will see screens right up where we monitor the security of our network, fraud, right? That will be more of a command center type of operation. Most people, it's going to look no different than one of our other analysts sitting next to each other because the technology has changed so much, right? But again, depending upon what we're talking about, again, security for us is first, right? All of our payments must be safe and secure. But then beyond that, it simply is not the same as it used to be.
you talked about these expanded offerings, right? You need quality behind those offerings. The network for doing more around digital identity, open banking. Can you talk about those offerings and the data center resources required behind those?
So we've done some acquisitions in those spaces to kind of bolster our capabilities in those areas. Many of them are public, right? For open banking, we acquired Aya in Europe and Finicity in the United States, Akata for digital identity, because we needed not just to kind of have the data center assets, but also the data capabilities that go along with offering those services. Now, in some cases, we leave those capabilities and centers alone for a while as we kind of understand how do we want to consolidate that into the Mastercard family. And I started our conversation talking about how we look at the business strategy and the data strategy before we move, right? We've learned that sometimes swallowing everything into the Mastercard family may not be the most effective way of moving into new businesses. And what we find sometimes with our acquisitions is they have a lot to teach us. And oftentimes, if we keep them as standalone businesses, we can actually learn more rather than doing consolidation just for consolidation's sake.
So JoAnn, you mentioned you're working on what to keep on premise and what to take on the cloud. Are there some initial decisions you've made there?
So I think our decisions are guided by security first, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but it really is true. Our security is paramount first, and from there we look at our applications and make the decision on what should stay in-house and what we can actually afford to put out on the cloud and is a private cloud to begin with, and we work with our multiple cloud providers to make sure the security is good as well. But that's really one of the things that we're working on. The other thing that guides us in these decisions is a bit of regulation as well. We are a regulated entity, so that is the other kind of North Star is compliance. And as we move into new businesses, we mentioned open banking, there is some laws that guide us in some of our newer businesses that we need to be mindful of.
What do you think is the biggest technology change in 2000, or the most powerful technology in 2023?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Bill Gates, I think. I just read his article about generative AI. Everybody's talking about it as a real game changer, and I do think it is. I think that we are going to see great changes come from generative AI and AI in general. We already are using AI in our fraud and security products, and that's more traditional AI. We will see generative AI change customer service. We will see generative AI change how marketing is done, how advertising is done, and how communications is done. We will see the change in some jobs, and we will see an awful lot change in a very rapid amount of time. But I also think it's an opportunity for us to rethink how we engage with each other. So I think that generative AI is going to shake things up rapidly. But I also think AI in general is changing. We're going to see stacking of models. We're going to see more logic happening in mimicking how humans interact. And so with those changes, I also think that there's also great responsibility for those of us who are in technology and data to think through the impacts to the individual and to make sure that as we step through these changes that we get it right. I think it's a really pivotal time right now. And so I think the challenges that, and again, that open mind and being curious, I think we need to have these conversations about how are we doing things as much as what the exciting technology is right now.
right? So yeah, so huge impact from AI, changes coming specifically from generative AI. So just one follow-up on that. Is it too quick or too fast for Mastercard to have done anything in response to generative AI and its data stack, data strategy, or is that still in brainstorm mode?
It's not quite in brainstorm mode. So just last month, we released guidelines for our employees to begin to explore generative AI. It's not in commercial use yet, so I will say that. But we've set up a process, a council, to start reviewing use cases. We know it's coming. We have some ideas. And we are expanding and changing our AI governance process to include generative AI. We know we will have uses for it in the coming days, but we will do it mindfully. We will use our responsible data principles to guide our way. And we will make sure that the impacts are right because we will continue to design with the individual at the center. And so all of that will continue, but we're excited by it. And I think it's going to cause a lot of new possibilities for the firm. And I think our employees are excited by the opportunity that it presents.
Is there a habit or tendency or learning from your professional life that you've carried over to your personal life inadvertently or purposefully?
Be curious. I think is one of my kind of golden rules. Be curious in your professional life and be curious in your personal life. I read voraciously. I never believe I know the answer. I always think there's multiple ways to solve a problem. And so I think if you keep an open mind and are curious about a solution or a problem, there are multiple ways to solve it. And so if you keep an open mind when a team is discussing a design solution or a solution to a problem, if you can work as a team and keep an open mind to everybody's perspective, you usually wind up in a better place.
Great. Be curious, open mind. JoAnn, that's exciting. I think thank you for talking with us today. There's a lot of really interesting things going on, and it sounds like Mastercard's in the middle of it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun chatting.
And thank you for watching. Remember to check out VentureBeat.com for more stories about the tech revolution. Subscribe to our newsletters and check out our other VB in Conversation videos at VentureBeat.com.